Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, James Robinson, Phillip Lindsay are all proof that just because you fall in the NFL draft doesn't mean you can't produce in fantasy. We predict which late round rookies could surprise us in 2024 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com, and looking forward to talking late NFL draft sleepers for fantasy. It's going to be a lot of fun today.
Yes, today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and I'm a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now. It's free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, so the last 2 days, we got into veteran winners and losers after the NFL draft. But now let's jump back into the draft, because we talked a lot about the guys that landed in good spots, that got drafted early, and that should be fantasy relevant, or at least we're expecting them to be. But there's a bunch of guys who fell in this draft, and it seems like more and more we're getting those late round picks from drafts actually producing all of a sudden in the NFL. It's not as rare anymore. We just saw Puka Nacua break the NFL record in receiving yards last year. So we're going to go through 3 guys each that we think they're not going to put up Puka Nacua numbers. We're not saying that, but they could be very fantasy relevant. So give me your first guy that you think could be very relevant for fantasy this season. That's a rookie that was drafted late this year, Vinny.
Yeah, in the intro, you mentioned some guys, James Robinson, Phillip Lindsay, Dameon Pierce is another guy that you could put in that list. Running backs are usually the pick, right? Because they come out of nowhere. Isaiah Pacheco took a little while, but he's a 7th-round pick, and now he's one of the better fantasy backs.
Kyren Williams, what was he, a 5th, 6th rounder?
Yeah, it took a while for both those guys, but running back seems to have the greatest opportunity here. And looking at the Giants depth chart, I'm circling Tyrone Tracy Jr. Now, I'm not going to say go out and draft him. You can't do that right now. Eric Gray is now listed as the backup to Devin Singletary, who was replacing Saquon Barkley, who signed with the Eagles. Now, Devin Singletary, I mentioned Dameon Pierce. He took over that job in Houston, did well. Probably got that sizable contract to come over to the Giants, and he has a connection with Brian Daboll because he's a former Bill. So there's a little bit of affinity toward Singletary, but we also know that Eric Gray has done nothing. We liked him a little bit last year as a potential for Saquon Barkley. He was coming out of Oklahoma, so we're saying, okay, this is a pipeline that has good fantasy production. Now, Tyrone Tracy really lit up the combine, and he's a special back. He is a converted wide receiver, so he has natural receiving skills. We know that's not a real strong suit for Singletary. Gray has yet to show that here in the league. And Saquon, a big part of what he did was catch the ball. They're going to need to replace that element at some point. And Singletary, even though he was the guy last year, not the epitome of durability. It doesn't really go back at all to his career, whether it's in Buffalo or in that 1 year with Houston. So I just say there's going to be attrition all over at running back, and that's usually what leads to it. Look what happened last year. Kyren Williams is a good example how Cam Akers and things we thought early in the season just fell apart, and it opened up the door for this back to be really productive. Now, it didn't happen for, say, a Ty Chandler the way we wanted it behind Alexander Madison, but things can develop quickly on these depth charts. So I'm going with Tyrone Tracy Jr. I think he's going to be involved in the passing game. I think he's going to beat out Eric Gray for the number 2 duties at some point in training camp, and they're going to go from there. I think they want a dynamic back, and I won't say this for certain here, but I think he has a little bit of James Cook in him in terms of the dynamic receiving ability. If that's the case, similar offenses, I think he could really work out for Daboll and also Mike Kafka, who knows how to get receiving backs involved from his time in Kansas City.
Yeah, the thing with Tracy, he's only been a running back for 1 year, right? So anything is possible for him. That's a big reason why he fell here. We don't exactly know how good he's going to be, but he still has a lot of room to grow in this position. He ranked 4th in missed tackles this past year. He could, Singletary is a good running back. I truly believe that. He's not a good pass catcher at all. So again, they still need to find that role with Saquon. And also, like, I think Saquon's a really good change of pace back. I don't think he should be getting 250 touches in any given year. So there is definitely room here for someone to take over a pretty significant role in this backfield. And I see no reason why Tyrone Tracy can't beat out a Gray with Eric Gray, right? I don't even know his name at this point. Like, he definitely can compete with him. Now, I also have a running back that I really like this guy. I really liked him before the draft, so maybe I'm biased. It's Audric Estime. Now, we knew he's going to fall a bit because he ran the 4.71 40-yard dash at the combine. You really just can't have that speed as a running back and expect to be drafted high in the draft. He falls to the 5th round. He gets picked by the Broncos. I think it's a really nice landing spot for him. But hey, Audric Estime was so good with Notre Dame. I know he ran slow, but he's a perfect body shape for an NFL running back at 5'11", 222 pounds. He's also super young. He won't turn 21 until the start of the NFL season this year. He ranked 3rd in the FBS and PFF grade at 94.2 overall grade. He averaged 6.4 yards per carry, ranked 1st among all FBS running backs with 200 plus carries. And he's the only running back in this draft class that had 200 carries this year and averaged over 4 yards after contact per attempt. He also, like, for his speed at 4.71, he had 14 rushes of 20 plus yards last year. That was 3rd in the FBS. So, like, he still had these big plays, and it's with Notre Dame. It's not like they're playing nobodies. Like, this is a good program. They have hard competition. Like, it. I'm not worried about his 40-yard dash. It kind of reminds me of Kyron Williams with Notre Dame a couple years ago. That's why he fell in the draft, right? Because the 40 time, his body type and play style is just so good, especially around the goal line. And with the Broncos, Javonte Williams just hasn't been it, right? I mean, we were all excited for him coming out of school, but he really struggled. I mean, he's been struggling his whole career, but last year averaging 3.6 yards per carry. And it's not the Broncos have a fine offensive line, and they even ranked 4th in run blocking last year per PFF in the NFL, 4th best run blocking offensive line. Everyone else was able to get it done. Jaleel McLaughlin averaged 5.4 yards per carry. Samaje Perine averaged 4.5. And then you have Javonte Williams down there at 3.6. He led the team by far in rushing attempts. But I think Audric Estime could actually compete against Javonte Williams to win this job. And maybe, like, Javonte Williams is a cut candidate. I don't know, but I would love this landing spot for him.
Yeah, and it's a different style of offense with Sean Payton. The last couple of years, they're changing it yet again here. So, looking at the style, I think you look at Estime. I think he has a golden opportunity because, again, Javonte Williams is underwhelmed, and we know how Sean Payton can be fickle with guys he's inherited. And we saw it with Russell Wilson to the extreme, where he said, "No, I'm going to move on. I'm going to put my guys in there," and he's got some of his old offensive skill players as well. So Estime really has a big opportunity. And when you look at the Notre Dame tapes and games from last year, he did have a great offensive line. Joe Alt was the pick by the Chargers in the 1st round, number 5 overall. So that's the type of blocking he had. But the Broncos, they do have some talent up front. They went out and got Mike McGlinchey and Ben Powers last year. They have Garrett Bowles still up front. So these are the key components they have for run blocking. And you figure Sean Payton, what are they going to do? They're breaking in a new quarterback. Most likely Bo Nix, the rookie, will start. So got to run the ball, protect him here as much as possible, and really lean on Estime. And we've seen it, right? I mean, Pierce, I brought him up earlier. That's a good example. That Texans team had no passing game, and you still had Pierce get high volume and produce for you. So that can happen. So don't worry too much about the overall state of the offense, except the fact that is Estime going to be in line to get some touches. So we'll watch that carefully with Williams. And Perine is still going to be involved somehow as a pass catcher. They do like McLaughlin in this because he reminds them a little bit of Alvin Kamara. So we'll see how it plays out in this backfield. But I think it's a wide open situation. That's what we're looking for in all these cases. That is there an opportunity? Is there attrition? Are there injuries? Is there something where this back, if they show some of the talent that got them drafted in the first place, are they going to walk through that door and take advantage? And I think Tracy and Estime both have that. And I think we will see. We have 4 more picks here, and I think they all have an opportunity.
Yeah, you're going to talk about another running back who landed in a spot where we'll see if he can compete because it's an interesting route they took this year for who's going to carry the ball for them. And then I have a very exciting tight end I'm going to talk about. We'll get to that in just a moment after we hear from one of our sponsors. Guys, I need you all to listen up for this huge announcement. I've been tracking the leaderboards every day, keeping my eye on the scores, putting all my heart into it, and I'm super pumped to announce I'm finally on top. That's right. Obviously, I'm talking about the hit mobile game Monopoly Go. You probably heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great mobile twist on classic Monopoly. You can play anywhere, anytime. You explore hundreds of Monopoly boards from Las Vegas to Camelot to the moon, all while raking in a huge fortune. Charge rent on iconic properties just like classic Monopoly. You can charge your friends rent on your iconic properties or go after their Monopoly money by pulling bank heists and tackling and taking wrecking balls to their landmarks. But my favorite part is the leaderboards where you can see who's a Monopoly tycoon and who's gone bankrupt. So get yourself on the charts. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store and Google Play. Vinny, I really am interested in your player, and I seeing him go in a lot of dynasty rookie drafts in the 3rd round. Tell us why he can be a really good value this year as a rookie. Oh, you're on mute.
We talked a lot about before the draft about the Chargers and how that was a great landing spot for running back. And then kind of in between our conversation with that, they had Gus Edwards and they got in J.K. Dobbins in the mix, right? So they essentially have acquired the entire Ravens backfield from last year with Greg Roman there. He's a year delayed. He was the Ravens offense coordinator. So he's trying to trust in these guys. But what happened with both these guys just a couple of years ago? Both were just unavailable with knee injuries. So these are not, again, durable guys. And that's where we're going to look at the attrition, the opportunity. So there's that. And then you look at Isaiah Spiller. What has this guy done? Not much at all. Like I think he was talked about. Okay, he's going to take over this backfield coming out of Texas A&M. He looks like a pretty good back, but he's underwhelmed and disappointed. And now you have a completely different offensive philosophy, coaching staff looking for different things. So that leads to my rookie sleeper here is Kimani Vidal. And you look at his opportunity, it's going to be ample in this Chargers offense. And what actually pleased me, we talked about this with the Justin Herbert situation, that they didn't really say we're going to be this run heavy offense. They drafted a couple wide receivers. I'll talk about one of them in our final segment. But when you look at the Chargers, they are still redefining what they're going to do here this season. And I think the door is open for everybody. And Vidal is in a really good situation again. Edwards is kind of a limited power back. Dobbins, you can't really trust to stay healthy. Spiller is just inconsistent. I don't think he's a really good player and doesn't run well. He's had all the chances, and now he's at best the number 3 on this team. So Vidal has a good chance to make this team in a good spot, get to number 3. We'll see what happens with Dobbins and what he can do to recover. But it seems like that guy is always hurt. Like, I think that's why he just waited and the Chargers, okay, he's available. We'll just add him, I guess. We have Gus Edwards. So just in case we don't like the running backs in the draft. But Vidal is the option. Now, unfortunately, no one went to the Cowboys, and I would have circled that guy above everyone else. But when you look at Vidal, I think he has opportunities, again, pass catching, getting involved, some explosive plays. And I think Harbaugh is going to just say, whoever the best man is in this backfield, I'm going to give it to him as much as possible. So I wouldn't lock anything in for Edwards, even though he was the priority free agent signing.
Yeah, that's his thing. Like Gus Edwards at this point in his career, I really don't think you want him to be a full lead back, right? He can split a backfield fine, but you don't want to go into the season and be like, okay, we're going to give this guy all the carries because he's all we have. And I know they added J.K. Dobbins, but no other team wanted to add him. He even went in for a visit with the Chiefs, and they were like, you know what? We'd rather just go with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's done nothing for us, who's been a huge disappointment. We'd rather just stick with him than sign you, JK, because clearly they didn't feel like he was fully healthy enough. The only team that was willing to give him the shot was his old offensive coordinator. All right. So I am a little bit worried about how healthy he is. So this is a really good landing spot for Vidal. We'll see if he can earn some time, but I like your pick there. Now, mine is a guy that's way too talented. This is where it comes from. He's just way too talented to how far he fell in the draft. And it's my boy, Jatavian Sanders, tight end out of Texas. He landed with the Panthers in the 4th round. I don't understand why he fell to the 4th round. I mean, right after this season ended, this college football season ended, he was considered a late 1st round pick. Like he was going in the late 1st round in a lot of mock drafts. early second round at worst. And then all of a sudden, as we're going on, he just kept falling and falling and falling. I don't really understand what's happening there, but this dude is so good. Like, he's such a good player. He just turned 21 years old as well. And he was this Texas Longhorns offense. I know they had Xavier Worthy. He was very good. AD Mitchell stinks, but he was there as well. And I don't know why people like him, but I'm going to stay on that stance that there was nothing there for me with him. But it was Jatavian Sanders that got me excited in this Texas offense. And he put up the numbers as well. He had the second most receptions and receiving yards among all FBS tight ends over the last 2 years, only behind Brock Bowers, who we're so excited about. And that's also while playing through a high ankle sprain this past year that he suffered in the middle of the season, missed only 2 games while he had surgery, came back and played on it. And he put up massive games towards the end of the year. This dude is so stinking good. And his competition with the Panthers is Tommy Tremble and Ian Thomas. Like, he's better than those guys immediately. I'm sorry to say it. He just is. Way better pass catcher, I should say, at least. I think he gets on the field early. We saw it last year with so many rookie tight ends really performing, and not even just Sam Laporta, but we saw it from Dalton Kincaid, from Luke Musgrave had games, Tucker Kraft. Like, there was guys putting up these numbers when they got the chance. And I think Sanders is going to get that opportunity in this offense. And I know, like, they have a stacked, like, I'm using quotes, wide receiver room right now because there's a lot of names, but like, it's still a bunch of guys that we're not like thrilled about. Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette, Adam Thielen, Jonathan Mingo. Like, I think that's a nice group for Bryce Young to have. I'm not sure any one of those guys like determines like I need to get all the targets. Like, Sanders should have a pretty significant role in this offense, and I think he's insanely talented. I'm so excited to see him here.
Yeah, it is a good landing spot for him for sure, because the Panthers have been sitting on looking for a tight end since Greg Olsen moved on here to the Seahawks and then went on to TV. So Greg Olsen, they gave him a good tight end for a long time, but they haven't had a fantasy relevant tight end in quite a while here. Tommy Tremble, he's just a guy. They've held on to him for a bit, but again, new offense with Dave Canales. They're trying to get more guys to stretch the field. And I think that's important to think about here. And Cade Otton, that's the kind of tight end he was for Canales in Tampa. And he made some plays. He was sneaky. He came up quite a bit as one of our matchup-based sleeper DFS type players last year. So there's some opportunity there. I think it comes down to how does this pecking order of the Panthers receiving core kind of line up here. Do one of the rookie receiver, or does the rookie receiver Legette, or one of the younger guys that kind of putting in the same boat, Mingo, somebody step up there to be regular snaps? And then do you see Deontay Johnson taking one outside spot? You have Adam Thielen in the slot. Like, how much are those wide receivers going to get in 11 personnel? And can Sanders crack that top 3 in targets, right? So it really comes down to competing with Mingo and Legette, and to see if he can be the number 3 guy. Right now, you think Adam Thielen, from the experience, he's going to be up there. Deontay Johnson is definitely going to lead this team in targets because of the way he runs out. So it comes down to Sanders and how much they use him. I do like your pick. I just think it might be a year on delay. I think you look at tight ends, they sometimes need that first year. And we've seen that receivers have accelerated from third year to second year. A lot of tight ends come through their second year. We did see that with Trey McBride there for the Cardinals. And that's, I kind of look at it. I don't want to get too excited because it is the Panthers offense. And like, if he had landed in a little bit more explosive, reliable offense where I knew what the quarterback was going to do, I'd feel a lot better about him. I think the reason he slipped, Michelle, is that he didn't have a very good combine. The workouts were, didn't show the same speed and athleticism he had. And that's his big asset. So the other thing is, can he get on a field there? Are they going to trust him in like some blocking situations to peel him out? Are they going to design packages for him to come offline and make catches? So these are some things we have to consider here, but the talent and the situation and the need is there for the Panthers to use them. Let's just see if they execute. It's more so I don't trust the Panthers as much right away and then worrying about Sanders.
What I love about this landing spot is that a lot of times it takes tight ends to break out because they have a hard time getting on the field. Like, he should be able to beat out Tremble and Ian Thomas.
Let's hope so.
Like,
if he can't, we're in trouble.
Yeah. And maybe it takes a few games, but I think throughout this rookie season he does that. But we have 2 more players to get to. They're both wide receivers. Yours is a little crazy, I will say that, but I'll let you discuss why, and I won't make any strong decisions until I hear your opinion and your your debate for it.
Yeah, and there's a reason I picked him. There's maybe a couple reasons. So we'll get into that in our final segment here. All right, it's a big time in the NBA. I'm trying to figure out how all these playoffs are going to go. We don't have the Lakers anymore. So it's kind of wide open. We have the Timberwolves and Nuggets. That's going to be a great, great series here in the West. So you want to get in on that action for sure. I mean, you have the team that's got the momentum plus the defending champs with Nikola Jokic. So a lot of good stuff to get in on the action there. And the only place to do that with the NBA, NHL playoffs, and with baseball going to full swing is FanDuel. FanDuel is giving a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on and make this year's playoffs pay off for you. Check it out. Again, it's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And check it out at FanDuel.com/locked on to take advantage of that special offer now. All right, Michelle, I will let you reveal your player first here, our third deep sleeper from the 2024 NFL Draft for fantasy, whether it's for this season or next season or some point to be fantasy relevant. So we have two wide receivers. I'll let you have the floor for your first one. I do agree with it. It's a really good landing spot.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ravens wide receiver Tez Walker. He goes in the 4th round. That's the first wide receiver they take off the board. We thought maybe they'd go a little bit sooner, but I actually really like this pick by them. And they did need to add other weapons for Lamar Jackson. But Tez Walker is 6'1", 193 pounds, very fast and explosive. His combine numbers are absurd, like 4.36 40, 40.5-inch vertical jump, and 11-foot 2-inch broad jump. Like, insane numbers, right? Just an insanely athletic person. Very big catch radius as well. But also, like, he used that catch radius, right? And you saw the production here in his final 2 years in college. He averaged nearly a touchdown per game. It was at 0.9 receiving touchdowns per game over the last 2 seasons. That was the second most in the FBS among all players with 20 plus games played, behind only Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, he had a rough going to start his college career. He tore his ACL in spring of his senior year of high school. So he was about to start his first year of college in the football program. That didn't work out because he tore his ACL, right? And then when he was about to start in 2020, because of the 2019 year he missed with the ACL tear, 2020 is when the pandemic hit, and he was going to play for North Carolina Central, and their season got canceled. So wipe out 2 years to start his college career just then. And then he transferred to Kent State in 2021. His first year really playing in college, he barely played. So his second year is when he broke out in 2022. That's literally like his second year playing in college. Put up 921 yards and 11 touchdowns. Then he transferred to UNC for his final year because his grandma was dealing with a very, very bad illness. He wanted to be closer to home. For whatever reason, the FBS didn't approve it, or NCAA didn't approve his transfer until October. So he missed UNC's first 4 games of the season. But he put up 700 receiving yards and 7 receiving touchdowns in the 8 games that he played. He led the team in receiving yards per game and receiving touchdowns. So, like, this dude can play. He just hasn't had really the opportunity to play all that much. And I think, like, when you put him into the Ravens offense, like, yeah, they extended Rashad Bateman for a 2-year contract. I think they wanted to do that instead of giving him the 5th-year option. Like, it's cheaper to do that route. He hasn't shown to be the first-round guy that they wanted him to be. They lost Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, I guess they could re-sign him if they wanted to, but it doesn't seem like they're going to. He had the second most targets on the team. So there is space here for him to take over a wide receiver 2 spot, or at least be a starting wide receiver in this offense. And I could see him hooking up with Lamar Jackson on some deep throws. Do I think he's going to be a consistent fantasy guy to start his career? No, but I do think he's going to have some pretty big boom games, even his rookie season, and could be like a flex consideration player, a really good best ball pick this year in 2024, late in drafts.
Yeah, I think that's a good point with best ball. With Walker, my concern here is just the people in front of him, right? And we do have Zay Flowers. We do have Rashad Bateman. I think they'll make Bateman a bigger part of their offense, you would think, because they just paid him. Like, I don't know why they would pay him if they don't want to throw to him as much.
Yeah,
He's a
but
first
he
round
played
pick.
16 games last year, had
I
367
don't know.
receiving
They
yards.
find
Like,
him to be valuable. I think he's one of those guys that he's going to be out there occupying space because, again, I think the Ravens are smart. If they didn't have a use for him, I don't think they would have kept him. So, yeah, two
he may
first
be out
round
there,
receivers.
just not getting targets, and that's fine
Yeah,
with me.
yeah, and you also have one of the first guys that re-signed, Nelson Agholor. You can't forget about him because he's still there. He's annoying, thorn in the side. He's going to be lining up in the slot. And then you have Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely. Do they get involved a little bit more? And it's also a run-heavy team. So these are some of the things. So I think for Walker, and again, we're speculating a little bit for these guys. Obviously, there's going to have to be a path there. Agholor has to fade and not do anything. You need to have Bateman get limited with the targets and not provide the big play element that they're looking for with Flowers. So if they decide, okay, Flowers gives us big plays, we want Walker on the field there, but he has an opportunity. He can rise quickly here. Agholor is just a guy at this point. I mean, the biggest thing is, can Walker show that he can be out there in the slot, or can they move Zay Flowers around? That would be his best ticket to seeing some regular snaps in this offense. So I think the talent is there. There's a little bit of window without OBJ there to be the big playmaker, the designated big play threat. And if you do that a few times, I think you can come through with some numbers here for Lamar Jackson. So we'll wait and see. But again, it might be like with a lot of these guys, it might be year two where the breaks really happen, but it still counts. We're still putting them on our radar for redraft and fantasy. And my guy, Michelle, everyone knows his last name. Everyone knows it's Jerry Rice's kid. It's Brenden Rice. Now, his whole draft process was very underwhelming. I'm just going to say this. His career at the end at USC was not that great.
No.
But I cannot ignore whose son he is. I know we haven't seen Michael Jordan's son go off. There isn't just a correlation to that. And he's not anywhere close to Marvin Harrison Jr. He's not better in terms of the physical skill set than his dad is. But I think he has a bit of a chip on his shoulder. And it really comes down in this Chargers offense where he went. Cornelius Johnson, they also drafted him behind him in the draft there. So they did give themselves some options in this passing game. But right now, you would break down like this. You have Josh Palmer there in a key role. You've got Quentin Johnston lined up as well. And you have Ladd McConkey. So there's not a lot here. And we got to see, is Johnston going to hold up? That comes down to it. Because if he can get on the field, I don't think they're going to throw to the tight end as much. That's going to be a bit of a shift after they lost Gerald Everett and all that targets. So I think it's going to come down to a lot of these three receivers and what they do with Justin Herbert and see if they open up the volume a little bit downfield. So I just don't trust Johnson. I'll just say that. He also was drafted by the previous regime. He didn't do all that much last year as a rookie. I think that's the door opening here. Palmer, again, acquiring a new coaching staff. The guy they handpicked was McConkey, and literally handpicked here Rice and Johnson. So I think it's just a big free-for-all here. With the Chargers and their vacated targets, they're going to sort a lot of things out with Greg Roman. I think the door is just open here for, okay, who are my best receivers that I want to put out there? If Johnson is just underwhelming, they're not going to just put him out there because he was the first-round pick 2023. These guys don't care. I mean, Tom Telesco's gone. They didn't make this pick. They're just going to say who are the best players out there that are going to help Justin Herbert downfield. Now, Brenden Rice, again, going back to his skill set, he's just very inconsistent. You can't rely on him with hands, but I think he has some big playability that is there. And they need this element with Justin Herbert. I think they're going to run the ball, throw it downfield. So if Johnson does not provide that, Rice is going to get the first shot over Cornelius Johnson to step in there with McConkey and Palmer. So a lot of interesting things happening, but I think the Chargers just have such a good atmosphere right now for running back, wide receiver, whatever. In this Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman era, I think all bets are off here with Justin Herbert.
Yeah, my thing with Brenden Rice is like you're playing with Caleb Williams and
Yeah.
you still couldn't do anything. You still stunk. You still couldn't even be the top guy in your offense in targets or receptions or receiving yards. Like he was pretty far off in receiving yards, and it's not like he was playing with these dominant other wide receivers. I know Taj Washington did get drafted, I think after
Yeah.
Rice or right around the same
Yeah, he
area,
did.
but like also like it's not like he's competing against a like when Jamar Chase and Terrence Marshall were together. You could say, well, maybe Marshall didn't put up the bigger numbers because he was playing against Jamar Chase, even though Marshall did put up big numbers. That was a bad example, but you get what I'm saying. There's no reason
one is good
for
and one
him
isn't,
not to
so
have
that's
done more. Yeah, there's no reason for Brenden Rice not to have done more. He had a good quarterback. Like, if I just don't. I can't see him being bad in college and then all of a sudden being good in the NFL, but you couldn't ask for a better position for him to land in. I mean, this is his
Yeah, that's what I
opportunity.
mean.
So
It's a
we'll
lot of
figure out.
location.
Yeah. We'll figure
Yeah.
out real fast if he can be anything like his father at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit of motivation. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He feels like he should have gone higher in the draft, disrespected. He's very confident in himself. Like, he thought that he could end up in a situation where he'd be a Brady Gronk type thing for his quarterback. Like, he doesn't lack confidence. I'll say that. And that's one asset you need if you're a wide receiver in the NFL. But yeah, I mean, a lot of breaks are going to happen. And I can't even, there's a wide range of outcomes for Rice, from not making the team altogether to ending up as a number 3. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if either happens. That's how kind of polarizing and volatile he has been as a prospect and a college player.
I like all 6 of our choices. Besides, okay, maybe I like 5 out of our 6 choices. All right. That is it for today's show. Thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Every day is Vinny and I will be back tomorrow talking more fantasy goodness. Don't miss it. Bye, y'all.